Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life.
Hats.
Rendo.
Was that your hat that you just knocked, or was it a crack of a back?
It was elbows. Actually,
Your elbows cracked.
Yeah, my mate used to do this. And my mate was like 16 years older than me. One of my, my one mate. And he used to, when I was young, he used to stretch, and his elbows would crack, and his back. And I was like, "What are you doing? Like, how does that even happen?" And I've got to the age now where I stretch and my elbows crack.
I've never ever cracked my elbows.
You're younger than me.
By how long?
Docs. By about 6 months or something.
Yeah. What's going on, man?
What is going on? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. You're just about to be on holiday, so you're finally going to get some work out of you.
6 weeks, I'm off.
Yeah, that's a proper public sector holiday, man.
Yeah. So, well, come on. I've been there 18 years.
Yeah, you probably deserve it. You probably deserve it for 6 years, though.
Jeez.
We've got a guest here. We got, man.
Oh, we have Jeremy from. Well, actually, Jeremy from where?
Yeah,
ABIB.
G'day,
Formerly
guys.
HardBlock.
From Adelaide.
Jeremy
from
from Adelaide. How you going, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, mate. This has been a while coming. This one, actually. I'm glad I got you on.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start, to be honest. I think we just had a bit of a chat before we came on, and I think chronologically is the best, most obvious way to do it. If you want to do it any other way, that's fine. But can you just give folks, we don't need to do the full Bitcoin story if you don't want to. You can do that. More than welcome. But
I am actually interested, to be honest, Jeremy, because I've heard you a few times, and I don't think I've heard your backstory.
Okay, do that.
How you got into
Go
it.
to that.
And then go into the work, and then into what you're doing now, and then we'll get into the ABIB stuff near the end, if that's okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I know you guys because I've been listening, and I like to, when I walk, I can remember like where I was listening to certain things. So it's sort of a weird thing to see you. I'm the one listening, I know.
Yeah,
so it's sort of weird to you feel like you know each other, but we actually have never seen each other and what we even look like. So yeah, I guess for me, I think, like I was doing some interviews with the Australian Bitcoin podcast, and I really resonated with almost every single guest, which was that I had like a normal career, like I worked a job in an office, and for a while it was good. But then as I got more senior, I sort of started to realize how things actually worked. I was like, this is like, it just is all bullshit. Like this is all just, you got to, it's all politics basically. And I got really angry, and I ended up quitting jobs like a couple of times, just like on the day, I quit my job because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I tried to find ways to earn income without being stuck in a 9-to-5 job. One of the things I tried was doing Forex trading, which was sort of trendier before crypto was invented. And because I was reading books about Forex in my Amazon algorithm, I kept getting these books about currencies and like currency reset. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I started reading. I'm like, oh, wow, this is like, I didn't know anything about fiat currencies, even though I had a commerce degree. So I actually got quite heavily into gold and silver, once I started to learn about the history of money. And I did that for a while. And then we moved to Adelaide for my wife's job, and we had 2 kids and didn't get a lot of time to, be researching things. Then after COVID happened, I started to worry about my super and like what was happening to my investments, seeing the stock market plummeting. And so I started to put more time into researching again. Again, got back into trying to, gold and gold mining. And I was watching at the time Real Vision, which before they got into crypto, had some pretty good content. And there was a couple of really influential interviews. The main one was with Michael Saylor. Pretty much the first interview he did publicly about Bitcoin. It's 2 hours. It was just like mind-blowing interview. That and reading the Bitcoin Standard around the same time. Up until those moments, I kind of thought we would be going back to a gold standard. And interestingly, some of the BRICS countries probably are going back to a gold standard pretty soon. But when I read the Bitcoin Standard, I'm like, no, we're not going back to this technology that's been around since 5,000 years. We're going to a technology that works on the internet. And it became so clear. And I can actually remember the moment when I was reading an early chapter in the Bitcoin Standard. I can remember where I were when I just got it. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the thing. And I had to like get up and just, I had so much energy. And so basically since then I've been consuming Bitcoin content, and I did get sidetracked on the shitcoin path for about 6 months. But then once I started running my own node, and then I sort of got into looking into, okay, how do you run an Ethereum node? I'm like, oh, you actually can't run an Ethereum node at home. Like it's almost impossible to do it without professional equipment. That's when it clicked. It's like, okay, it's only Bitcoin that is going to do this. And around the same time, so I had a 1-year-old. I was working in Adelaide. This is post-COVID, remotely for a company in Sydney. And I kind of realized I just didn't really have any friends in real life. Like all of my interactions were on a screen. I'm like, I've got to get out and just meet some people. So I thought I'll go to the Bitcoin meetup in Adelaide. So I went to that one. First thing I do is I sit down with Rusty, who's the original Lightning developer, and Daniel, and they say hello, and they're like, oh, we're talking about shitcoins, and they start with Ethereum. I'm like, whoa, this is like pretty full on. But then I totally started to get it. Initially, I was like, who are these guys? Like, they don't seem to understand anything. Then I realized, oh, these guys understand everything. Like these guys have been around a long time. I don't understand.
What a great first two, but can I just say what a great first two you got? That's impressive.
Yeah. It was phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, because Rusty doesn't go that often. I didn't realize.
Okay.
And then it just so happened that Daniel was looking for a product manager 2 days a week. I wanted a job part-time. I had been doing IT work. I had sort of taught myself design, because in that period we actually published, my wife and I, some books. So we published some children's books and another a couple of non-fiction books. And so through that process, I taught myself graphic design, typesetting, all those sorts of skills. And, the combination of the IT project management I was previously doing, and then the design skills kind of worked quite well with product management. So that's how I ended up working at Daniel. So just because I turned up at the meetup after a couple of meetings, he and I had a chat, and ended up working at HardBlock as a product manager. So that was quite a bit. So maybe I'll give you another chance to have another question.
No, that's good. It's all good.
I just want to quickly say, like, going back to, I guess, your first meetup, and probably quite luckily sitting down with Daniel and Rusty when we first, I don't know if you remember this, Hats, when we first went to the first Bush Bash in Murrah.
Yeah.
And there was quite a heated debate with, I think you were there, me, JP, and a couple of girls, and there were a couple of girls there.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that were
the blockchain Australia people.
They were talking about how Ethereum had value, and I still remember the veins on JP's neck arguing passionately about it. And I'm thinking, this guy's about to have a heart attack.
Yeah, I know. He's a passionate man. But he's just over the bullshit.
Yeah, it just comes back to, like, I don't want to say luck, but just getting in with the right people at the right time.
Yeah, if you can find, and there's plenty of them now. There's plenty of good people you can find and just hang on to for a while. But you do probably start, given your time period, you do have to, back then certainly, you probably had to start online and find people through Twitter lurking or YouTube channels or whatever it was. And then it probably started more overseas, like you watching Real Vision or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden there's a couple of pockets of things coming out the woodwork in Australia, and you start to see. And then if all of a sudden you're in a city, we're not in a city, so you've got a local meetup you can go to. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's messy. And for me, I remember trying to find a good podcast. So I typed Bitcoin into the podcast app, and you can't find Stefan Livera or Rabbit Hole Recap. Like, you can't find Citadel Dispatch. You can't find those by typing Bitcoin in, because that Bitcoin is not in the title of their podcast. So if you don't get a good recommendation of where to start on a podcast, you can easily go down the wrong path. And I think I kind of did, but I figured it out in the end. But yeah, you're right. Like, who you meet first and what resources you start with. I actually didn't buy the Bitcoin Standard straight away, and the reason is because it was $31 on my Kindle, and I thought that's a lot for a book or an ebook. I'll try something else, and it actually cost me a lot of money, because in that time the Bitcoin price went from 14,000 to 20,000. So I should have spent the $30 and bought the book earlier. But, so the resources you start with obviously make a huge difference.
They really do. Can I just ask you said about reading Saifedean's book, and you had that sort of light bulb moment. What was your feeling? Was your feeling, holy shit, this is going to be everything? Or was oh, holy shit,
the world,
everything else is screwed? Like,
back then I was thinking about it more as an investment. And so if I buy this, I'm going to be, my family's wealth is going to be preserved. That was kind of my focus.
Yeah.
It took me a lot longer to realize the implications of the government spending and, the infiltration of everything in society. So that probably took maybe, I don't know, almost like a year after that. But, at that moment, it was purely like, this is an investment, and it's just, that's kind of, it's for me. And it's taken me a long time to realize, this is for everyone. And the more we can contribute to it, the better everyone's going to be.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of volatility in the early days, how did you stomach that? Like in terms of, was it just a case of not overcommitting yourself, or was it like you sort of got the problem, so and you knew it was going to be volatile, so you just sort of went with it, or was it a painful experience to go through?
So when I started, before I had that moment reading the Bitcoin Standard, I kind of saw it like an option. Like this could be worth a lot, or it could be worth zero. So I put in a small amount, knowing that if it went to zero, I'm happy with that. I think once I got an understanding of it, I was putting in money that I knew I wasn't going to access for 20 years or something. So I kind of didn't, I don't know, like it didn't bother me so much. But I had done like a fair bit of trading and stuff prior to that. So maybe I had a bit of experience dealing with those sorts of things. But
yeah,
I think, and this is sort of what you see when you tell someone else to buy it at a good time, you have to have the fundamental conviction. And when you do, the price doesn't really matter. But if you're just buying it so the price will go up and then the price goes down, you're like, that's not why I bought it, I better sell it. I think having had that fundamental conviction, the price swings didn't really bother me. It was more like other people be like, is Bitcoin crashing? Like, is it going to die? I'm like, oh, no. But it was just, that was more the implication that other people would say stuff rather than it really bothering me too much. Sometimes you're annoyed. It's like, why did I buy it? I bought some at like 80,000 Australian dollars. I'm like, why did I do that? But at the time, you thought it's going to go up even more. So
yeah. Oh yeah, I bought that. I was probably the very top.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, I was DCAing by then, so
you'd have been you'd about the top as well.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
So just thinking about anybody who's listening right now. So let's say they're quite new to it, and they're thinking, maybe I should, or maybe have a little bit, or maybe they're thinking, I should have some. Would your advice still be to have a little bit, it's very much a long-term consideration, have a little bit, get a bit of skin in the game and learn? Or do you think that where we are currently sitting and the way things are in the world, people should, I wouldn't say ape in, but like go a bit stronger than just that little bit? I mean, what do you think there? I don't think there's a right answer. I just
yeah. So I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize, I even think a lot of Bitcoiners miss this. You really don't need a lot of Bitcoin. If you can have 0.1, you're probably your family's set up for life, not just you, your family and your grandkids. And that 0.1, like, if you think about it in the context of your super, it's not actually that hard to get. And if you were to put away at, $20 a week or something and just not really think about it, you'd probably build up to something pretty decent. So you don't need that much, but what you do need is the conviction. So you don't want to just go in and buy some without any understanding of Bitcoin at all. Because then you can make mistakes, for example, like leaving it on an exchange or trying to get interest or something and getting distracted. So I think it's not just about committing the money, you got to commit the time, do the research. I mean, read the Bitcoin Standard. There's so much content now. And then I think it's really important to actually use the software. It's like it was not easy for me to get started with running Bitcoin Core. So I was using a Windows computer. It wouldn't let me do it in the main. I had to get administrator privileges for some reason. I'm sure Microsoft did that on purpose. I'm now using Linux and I know what I'm doing. But like as a very kind of not that computer savvy person, it's not that easy to get started. But I think you just got to do something and find someone who can show, like at a meetup, do some Lightning transactions, do some Bitcoin transactions. A lot of people don't realize there's a test Bitcoin network. And you can get test Bitcoins for free and you can do transactions that cost you nothing and you can just play around with it and see what it does. So I think it's really important to use it because once you start using it, you realize, okay, so this is how it works. This is why this one is going to work, not like Ethereum. And that really importance of, and I think it's sort of taken me a while to realize that Bitcoin is only Bitcoin if you've custodied it. If you have Bitcoin on an exchange, it's not Bitcoin, it's something else. I consider it like a Bitcoin deposit, kind of like how cash in your hand is not the same as cash in your bank account. They're quite different things and they have different names. Like cash in your hand is currency, cash in your bank account is a deposit. So yeah, I'd say, come back to it. You don't need that much. So start with a little bit. And then once you sort of learn and you realize you're going to want more because you look at all the other things where you could have your wealth and you think, why do I have it there? Like it's just, unless I need it for the short term, there's just no purpose for it being in those vehicles, especially, we'll talk about it later, but the banking sector doesn't look, super stable right now. So why would you trust them to look after your wealth when there's other ways to do it?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think if you can, it's just daunting where you come in for a new person. Like I fully agree with you. Like the Bitcoin Standard is a wonderful book. Even that, I don't know whether that's a normie can just pick that up and go. Like, and I think in some ways, it's just like find a Lightning wallet, give somebody $1 worth of Bitcoin, let them send it back to you, see what happens. Let them give them $1, then delete the wallet from their phone with no way of pulling it back. Okay, that's it, gone forever. That kind of like really practical things going, but with an amount that you can live with. If you're just burning it for the community type thing. Yeah. If it's genuinely something you care about, I mean, obviously you can't do that a million times over. But if somebody is a friend or something, you can do these kind of things. But it's just knowing where to start with people is so difficult. And with this pod, we struggle with. Obviously, we've done a few now, so some people will be listening with the benefit of having listened out to other ones, and they'll have some knowledge themselves, or far greater than us for some of them. But then some people are listening that just don't know anything, and they're just coming in. It's like, where do we start with every single episode? How do we help people?
Well, how many pods have you listened to or started listening to that you've gone, I'm going to go back to the start? Most people don't. They go from, day whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah.
The only person I've ever heard say that they did was Daz. He went back to the start of Preston's Investors podcast.
Did he?
And went through them all.
But was it on like 4 times speed or something? Probably.
Yeah, because exactly. Like he's an
I think one of the things we sort of forget to do is defining the problem. So I studied engineering in uni, and they train you to really focus on what you're trying to do and working backwards to find the best solution. And a good example of the problem we have is my grandfather passed away. My grandmother gave me his old coins, and he collected these 1966 50-cent coins. So they're round 50-cent coins. They have the same design as the current 50-cent coins, but they're 80% silver. Mm-hmm. And so he knew, and some people knew that these were more valuable. He kept them, and he kept like ones in good condition. So those coins are worth $12. The silver content is worth $12, but the face value is still legal tender at 50 cents. So, if you can just give examples like that to show people, hey, this is the same money. What over time it's losing value. We can no longer afford to fill this coin with silver because there's just so many of them. Another great example that I've used is the postage stamp. So the Australian currency we have now came in about 1964, and around that time, a postage stamp, like a domestic stamp to send a letter somewhere in Australia, was 5 cents. Now it's $1.20. But it should be cheaper, right? We have better trucks, we have computers to move the letters around the DCs and everything like that. Why is it the same thing that was 5 cents in 1964, $1.20 now? And that just shows you like how the devaluation of our money. So I think it's probably, if you're someone who's really new and just not like a normie, you really have to define the problem first and say, look, this is our money is broken. That's without even talking about bank accounts and fractional reserve and everything like that. And it's quite easy now because you can just look and see the inflation all around you, and the price of everything going up. But a couple of like tangible things like that. It's quite nice to hold. It's not that expensive to buy. Like they're about $18 to buy a silver 50-cent coin, but they're heavy. Like it's a really dense metal, and you can kind of feel the value of it. If you're trying to convince someone in person and you give them that. So this is what real money is meant to feel like. This is the rubbish that we have now made of, I don't know, it's made of nickel or something. That can be a good starting point.
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who's his son is into metal detecting, and they recently went down to Victoria to the goldfields in Victoria somewhere. Oh, wow. And they went metal detecting, and when they found that they actually did find a gold coin which was 1858. Wow. Which is but it was a gold coin, but it's 1858. But which I think they've looked up, and it's worth about $800 or something. Yep. But it's also, they think it was an 1857 that was restamped 1858, and because that's a rare coin, it's also, they think it's going to be more, so they're having to have it valued, etc. So anyway, but the point is, there's two lessons to be learned there. One was the gold value, look at the gold value over time, and two, the scarcity value, and the other thing too. So you can if you can find these little things that mean something to somebody in their field, whatever it is, for other people it might be just the cost of a Mars bar. Like, what was that when you were a kid, or whatever, or can of Coke? What was that when you were a kid? And you can explain the problem that way. But when the inflation, as you say, as the inflation problem has got worse, it's much more obvious, and then it's easier to tell the story. When it's just 1 or 2 or 3%, you think it's not too bad, and you don't really care. But maybe if it gets to 10 or 15, that's a problem for people. So
I still go to beer, believe it or not.
Sure. Well,
yeah, $2.
I believe it, bro.
Yeah, $2 for a schooner down at the local pub when I was like 18.
Yeah, and what would it cost? Your local
like fucking, it depends now. Like
anywhere
from 9 to
Yeah.
$13 for a
Like
beer.
I used to get $10 Parma and pot when I was at uni.
Right.
Crazy.
But that's in some ways obfuscated away from it, like the uni pub versus the trendy pub that you might now drinking, or the craft beer that you might drinking in now. So people say, "Oh, but you're not drinking the same thing," or something. But if it's trying to get like for like and over time,
and that's where a postage stamp is really good, because it's basically it's the same service, right?
Yes,
and it should be cheaper. Like
with
as humans, with all of our economic improvements and technology improvements since 1964, that should be cheaper, and yet it's way more expensive.
Yeah.
And that's just like, to me, because I did a lot of research trying to figure out what is the best way to explain this. And I thought, okay, a postage stamp, that's something everyone understands. And you see the price would just keep going up. It's crazy.
Yep.
Have you ever heard an argument to try to rationalize stamps going up? Like, it's harder to deliver because there's less, so we need to charge more. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever heard that argument?
Oh, I think recently they might try and make that argument, but before the internet, like, this has been a trend, since the 60s, like since the Australian dollar was introduced.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of look at their costs, and everything is going up. The labor is going up a few percent a year. The petrol is going up. I haven't kind of spoken to anyone who represents Australia Post to try and defend their position, but it's it's pretty obvious to us why it's happening, right? And even then, I think Australia Post struggles to make a profit.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know.
So you go on.
No, when I've explained that kind of idea of inflation and money and all that kind of stuff to normie friends or family, they get it. Like, there's no argument against the rationale, like, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but they can't get
the next step.
And that's that little void there. I'm not sure where that is, or what I'm missing, what we're missing as a Bitcoin maxi community.
Oh, well, I think at that point you get to what am I trying to say? You get to the point where you're trying to not just convince somebody of something new, but you're also then having to convince them of some of the beliefs that they already hold are wrong.
Yeah.
And
yes.
people are
That's
not
scary.
People are really resistant. Understandably, we're all resistant to that, right?
It's like it's a too hard thing, because I think, like, in my experience, they just go, oh, that's right, but then they go, nah, shrug their shoulders.
But if you notice the difference when you go to a young person, and explain it to, if you were to explain this to a 15-year-old or something, you'd probably find that they'd be like, they'd follow your logic and go, okay.
Yep.
Whereas, but because you're not having to dismantle all of these other previously held beliefs,
yes.
None of us like that. I mean, look, and it's across everything. Like, you're asking people at the same time as there may be dismantling beliefs around the school system, or the medical system, or their government, or they're like, it's just another thing and I can't cope with another thing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely it.
Particularly when they're maybe under stress and financially, like, everybody's under stress financially.
A lot of people just don't want to be responsible. They're quite happy that the RBA is kind of sorting out the money for them and someone's managing their super. They just don't want to have to deal with that. And then when you kind of what you're doing is you're breaking down and saying, being a sovereign individual is, I'm responsible for everything. So I'm in control. No one can debase my currency, but it's up to me. If I lose the password, then it's, I'm screwed. And some people, that just freaks them out. They just can't deal with that. They want someone else to deal with that. And you can do that in Bitcoin too. But I think, there's that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
There's some people who you will listen to you, and they're the ones you focus on. And there's other people, it's just too much. It's too scary to break. Just what you're saying is, well, we don't even need the RBA. Like, this whole structure of, like, what's reported in the newspaper, we don't need any of that. Like, that's a very scary concept, and they can't really imagine such a different world. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but they can't imagine that this world is going to change. They have to see it with their own eyes first.
Oh, I still can't see how it's going to get easier for people, because, like, in this current environment, like, people are stressed enough, and, like, by adding another layer of complexity to their lives, I can kind of understand from a normie perspective why they would just be like, fuck me, like, I can barely pay my bills, I can barely feed
sorry, my stomach,
feed my kids or hats who's hungry. Why do I need to start thinking about this? because they'll have to. Yeah. Anyway.
No, all I was going to say was I think that roughly the first 10 years of Bitcoin is about greed, because it's about the people who can get it and go, wow, there's an opportunity there. And then I'm talking about from our perspective sitting in Australia, right? So maybe vastly different from other people in other countries, but the next 10 years, because they might be here already, but the next 10 years are actually going to be about fear. And that those years have started already. So like that was 2019. So they've started, and for some people they're really right in the middle of it. But like I think coming very soon is like people are you're just not going to be able to deny it anymore. It's going to it's going to be so fucking painful for them that they're not going to be able to, and they're just going to capitulate into it. And which is, I don't want that. This is why I'm doing. This is why we do this. This is why we're all sitting here. Yeah. We're trying our best to bring people across.
We unfortunately we can't get everyone out. Like it's. I kind of feel like as Bitcoiners we're going to have to deal with survivor's guilt, because we're going to be okay. Like we're all prepared. But you know, like you look at a bank account. You can only get $1,000 or $2,000 a day out in cash from your bank, and if everyone tries to pull their cash out, it's not there.
Yep.
And so some people are going to get really hurt by this at some point. Either our currency is going to be hyperinflated away, or the banks are going to collapse. Like I don't see another way out other than those two options. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to lose like all their hard-earned work that they put into their salary, thought the bank would look after them. And yeah, I mean, like people like yourself and myself and others are trying to push this word out there. But even if we were successful, not everyone can get out. Like it's just not mathematically possible for everyone to pull their money out. It's just, and that's kind of like a pretty scary concept.
I mean, I try not to be too personal on this, but like my wife drives a shitbox of a car. She's got the worst car, and she needs a new car, right? So we
talked about this recently, actually,
about my car being shit.
No, your wife and I.
Oh, right, okay. But so I've finally gone, yeah, okay, fair enough. But we're not buying a new car, right? But what's happened, obviously, through COVID, the money that was pumped in secondhand and supply issues, So even secondhand car values went up quite significantly. But right now, they're falling off a cliff, right? And what's happening there, I believe, is that people are being smashed on their rent and their mortgage, and they're selling either their second car or maybe even their first car to stomach the bill that's the more important bill, that might be the food bill or the roof bill. Right? But there comes a point where there's people have got nothing left to sell. Or nothing that's going to make a material difference to, you know, their being able to pay the service the big bills thing, and that's the tipping point.
Yes.
When you get to that nothing left to sell, and then people are going to make either really good or really bad decisions, and the rest of us are going to have to deal with whatever decisions that most people make.
Most people make. Because
we see it here, as crime numbers are increasing.
Yeah.
Burglaries are increasing, you know, stuff like that. And it's not nice, but I understand that the vast majority of people wouldn't choose that. They're doing that. They're doing it out of necessity, right?
Yes, 100%.
And I think we're getting very close to that, and it's not pleasant to think about. So, and it's not pleasant for me to think about. So, you know, and that's from somebody who hopes that he knows some form of solution. Imagine what it's like for people to think about when they don't even know that there's a solution. Anyway, this is awful, right? Yeah.
We're good at that.
So let's talk HardBlock for a bit if we can. So you went to the meetup, you met with Daniel, you went and did a couple of days a week with that. So what were you doing at HardBlock? How long were you there? And why did you move on, if you don't mind talking about that?
Sure. So I was there for about 18 months as the product manager, but it was a small company. So I did a lot of different things, including onboarding customers, you know, checking their customer service emails and that sort of thing. But mostly I was there to implement new features and work with the developer to implement those. So I designed the feature and work with give him the instructions on how to do program and so on. So if I'm looking back, the things that I think I'm really proud of that I worked there is the DCA feature. So there's basically now a way where you can just set it up so you just send money from your bank account on a recurring payment. It automatically buys it, and then it can automatically send it to your hardware wallet or wherever it'll go in the Bitcoin network. So
was that your baby? Was that your little? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Big fan over here.
Yeah, that's
well done. I did not know that. Congratulations. That's great.
So yeah, I still look at that and think I haven't seen a better product out there, certainly in the Australian market. So that was really cool. And also the withdrawal, the fee mechanism. Because
the batch transfers on the Saturday night stuff.
Oh, I did that. I did that one as well, but also just the manual ones. because Bitcoin fees are actually really complicated. Because you think, if you look backwards at what you think the fee is going to be, you have no idea that right in 1 minute someone's going to dump a whole heap of transactions and the fee market totally changes, and you could be stuck for a week. But yet most Bitcoiners want to pay like 20 cents for a transaction and regret paying even that much. So I tried to design a transaction mechanism that would make it feel like a wallet that was your own wallet that you could just use to send. So we made it so it was linked to the mempool space fee calculation, which is much more sophisticated than what you get out of Bitcoin Core. And I think for the most part that worked until recently with that, the ordinals and how it stuffed up the whole mempool. But so I worked on that. And then I just redesigned the whole website. So Daniel has actually been running that company since 2014. And so web design's come a fair way in that time. So kind of needed a refresh. And it really wasn't designed for mobile, because I think back in 2014, probably people weren't using their mobiles as much as they would now. Now it's like almost all mobile use. So the kind of final thing I did was to redesign the interior and exterior of the website. And then kind of that project was done, and my wife and I had decided to start a business. So she's a neuropsychologist, and she was working for someone else's practice, and they were taking a third of her pay. And I'm like, you know what, I could do that, and we could keep like pretty much most of that 1/3. So I basically have a job, and she has her same job. So we have our own practice now, and it's really good because we've got 2 kids. We've got a 3 and a 6-year-old, and so we kind of balance. We have a lot of flexibility in terms of balancing how we look after the kids and how we work. So that was kind of fortuitous timing that I'd finished that piece of work, and our business was sort of starting to ramp up. And then around the same time, Ethan, because I had been working with the Australian Bitcoin industry body, working on just submissions to Treasury, like writing the submissions. And Ethan, who is the chairman and started that organization, suggested that I apply to be the CEO. And so I did that as well. And so kind of at the same time, I got that role, finished up HardBlock, started our business, and that's kind of the setup I'm in at the moment. So balancing all of that.
So I guess that's where we get into it, right? So I fully respect what you guys are trying to do, right? It's excellent. My reticence, I guess, is not about what you guys are trying to do. It's about whether government are ever going to be willing to deal with you and respond to you in an honest fashion. Talk to us about what your experience has been on that kind of thing so far.
Sure. I just go, Brent.
I was going to say, before you do, I'm going to put my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
My view is that if we as maxis don't have a seat at the table, we're doing ourselves a disservice. When there's someone like, what is it, Blockchain Australia or whatever, who are the only ones with a voice, and we don't have a voice.
Very, very quickly, can I just add to that, and then we'll let
let's just argue.
Yeah, you mean you'll argue?
Give Jeremy
no, but you have too, but like as a guy who did quite a lot of years in government, I became a line in the sand. I was like, you can't tie projects together. You just, if something's broken, you got to go, that's broken. Let's go start a new thing and move from here.
And wait for everyone.
No. And then slowly bring the problem from, fix, like line in the sand. There's a problem over there. We start a new thing over here, and we gradually try and bring people. We're good from here on, and then we gradually try and pull people across, rather than trying to marry the two systems and move forward. Because anyway, that's a debate. Yeah. Who's right and who's wrong, and why?
Maybe I'll just give you for the listeners a bit of context of the Australian Bitcoin Industry Body, or ABIB.
That's a good idea.
So as Brendo mentioned, prior to ABIB being formed, the only representation a crypto or Bitcoin firm could have was through Blockchain Australia, who represent a whole heap of crypto projects, including Alex Saunders, who I think was on their board. And then, when he, I don't know what, did he go to jail? But when that scam happened, they just quietly rubbed him out of their website.
Was that Nugget something?
Oh, Nugget News.
Yeah. I didn't realize that was Alan. Yeah, okay.
And that's not the first time something like that happened. And so that was just not a tenable position for any of the Bitcoin-only exchanges to be represented by them. But all of the exchanges have to register with AUSTRAC. It's just the only way to operate an exchange in Australia. And if you want to meet with Austrac, you have to have an industry body. There are 400 and something exchanges registered, so they're not going to meet with every single one. They're like, okay, if you want to meet with us, you have to form an industry body. So Ethan said, fine, I'll form an industry body. So he went and did all the work and all the, it's a registered not-for-profit, I think. He did all the legal and accounting work to get it set up. And now we do have regular meetings with Austrac, so it means that our exchanges can have a two-way interaction with them. So I guess it is kind of a weird thing. It'd be like going into a church and saying that God doesn't exist. Like, it's kind of the message that we're giving. And so for a lot of people, like, it's just an untenable position. And so we do a lot of work where you kind of think, is anyone listening? But there's a couple of subtle things that I think are important. One is we're not actually representing Bitcoin. We're representing Bitcoin businesses in Australia.
Yes.
So if you want to run a business in Australia and use Bitcoin or accept Bitcoin or be a Bitcoin exchange, you have to follow the rules. You have to put your GST forms in. You have to, there's all sorts of things you have to do. And so you have to know how to do that. And if the government hasn't defined for you what rules to follow, then you don't know what to do. And so, ABIB, I hope, will have a role in kind of helping to shape maybe some of that a little bit. There's also, little things could make quite a big difference. So, for example, there's a guidance on the ATO website about a personal use asset in crypto. It's something like, if you acquire the asset for less than $10,000 and you intend to use it to spend, then you don't have to pay capital gains tax.
Yeah.
You could interpret that if I bought some Bitcoin, then I move it to my Lightning wallet and I spend it, then I don't have to pay capital gains tax. But wouldn't it be amazing if we got a ruling that actually made that really clear?
Yep.
And you're like, every time I use my Lightning wallet, it's capital gains tax free, something like that. So there's little things, like if we could just get a few clarifications, that we could go off and do our own thing in Bitcoin and we'd know what to do. You could tell the accountants, look, here's the ruling. The government go off and do their thing and make lots of debt and whatever. We're not going to, be bothered by that. But, the government is not going to go and destroy themselves. They're not going to get rid of the RBA. But I also think, and this is, we did a petition which we could get into. I kind of would like if we had like a smooth transition from where we are now to where we're going. Like, I don't want to, I think it would be quite bad if we had like a total destruction, like the government just ran out of money because the Australian dollar became worthless. Maybe not everyone disagrees with that, but I think from a societal perspective, if the government adopted Bitcoin earlier than other countries, it would be better for all of us. That's my perspective. I think some people think maybe it'll give them too much power, but the thing is, if they had Bitcoin, they can't just print it. Like, they can't just issue a lot of debt against it. Like, it would constrain them. I think Sri Lanka serves as a very good example of a government that mismanages their finances. They went organic, and their rice crops plummeted. So they became from being an exporter to an importer. So they started running out of money, and then all of a sudden they couldn't afford to buy ships of petrol, and their country ran out of petrol. I don't want that to happen here.
There you go. Hats, what do you say to that?
Well, I say I'm wrong. You guys are right.
Sorry, what was that?
You heard me. But I'm not getting involved because all I'm just, and I don't mean that in a really negative way. I just mean, like, literally, I got to the point where I was like, became a problem for me to work in an environment, and it was just like so painful to work in that I just like, I need to get myself out of this and do something more positive. Yes. And I just I haven't had that experience. I don't want to see other good people have to have that experience. But if they're able and stronger, tougher than me and able to take it on, more power to you, then awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong. And I know what those environments are like. That's why I've had to quit jobs a couple of times. But like, a really good example is like in the last couple of days, Robert F. Kennedy, who's running for president in America, has said, it's interesting, the article title focuses a lot on Bitcoin. He basically said he wants to back US T-bills, which is like a form of US debt, with 1% hard money. So
hard assets,
gold, hard asset, gold, silver, platinum, or Bitcoin. Now, the Bitcoin, as I said, it's going to be Bitcoin. But even if it's just not even 1% Bitcoin, it's a lot of Bitcoin. But if that were to happen, and maybe it's not this election cycle, maybe it's the next one, and Australia goes and follows suit, who do you want them to talk to figure out how is it best to implement this sort of thing? Is it Blockchain Australia, or is it ABIB? And I think what we've been doing, so I'll probably, we did a petition recently.
Yeah, can you talk about that, please? Yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted to do a petition around one of our manifesto items, and the one that I chose was about the HODL Act, which we wanted to see governments and councils holding Bitcoin. And so I thought a good way to do that would be to argue that the RBA should hold Bitcoin. And just like a little bit of context. So in Australia, as the information is publicly available, the Reserve Bank is a 100% government-owned entity of the Australian government, and Treasury is like an economic advisor. In America, the Treasury Department actually issues the debt, and the Reserve Bank, there's a whole history behind that, prints the money. But so I think it's a different setup in Australia. But for context, we asked for legislation so that the RBA would hold 2% of what's called foreign exchange assets or reserve assets in Bitcoin. And the Bank of International Settlements has issued guidance that 1% to 2%, a bank can hold up to 1% to 2% of their capital in cryptocurrencies. So I thought, well, that's kind of, they're basically endorsing it. This is the central bank of the world. And it's like an insurance policy. You're not saying convert everything, but if you look at what we hold, 88% of Australia's money is in fiat currencies and different kind of forms of fiat currencies. And this is external to the Australian dollars because we can just print as many as we want of those. We have 80 tons of gold, which is very little. And most of that is in England. So it's not custodied in our country. And we have 4 bars of gold in Sydney. So the whole wealth of Australia that's not fiat currency is 4 bars of gold in Sydney.
Is that real? Is that true?
That's wild. I heard you say
that is in an official document in a PDF from the RBA website.
4 bars, like a bar this size.
Oh, they're kilo bars, so they're worth probably $1 million each, but still
$4 million.
$4 million
for a
that's
whole country.
And then the rest of what we own is fiat currencies, and there's some gold in England. But like there's a history of countries not giving gold back. So that's what you know about self-custody. And that was kind of the impetus, yeah.
So let's just pull the thread on that one, right? So let's forget Bitcoin for a second, right?
Sure.
And let's say we get Mad Max scenario. That's where Australia's starting.
We're fucked.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, granted, there's also minerals under the ground.
Yeah, we've got gold in the ground, but you got to expend energy to get it out.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Yeah.
Who sent their boat? Was it France?
France.
Yeah, France. Yeah.
So 1971, they sent it. I couldn't find good evidence about this, but they sent a destroyer to New Jersey to get their gold back.
Yeah.
And Nixon closed the gold window. No, they didn't.
Oh, I thought they got it, and then Nixon goes, no.
No, I think someone else got it like a month before, maybe Germany or someone else.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was France that got theirs, and then the Brits went for theirs, and were told no.
No, yeah.
I don't believe so. There's not great first-hand evidence about this. It's kind of a bit of an old wives' tale, but
yeah, I'd like to see.
I believe France missed out. Yeah.
Okay.
And like you kind of, when I look at England as a country right now, I believe they're going to have a lot of issues with because they input all their food and all their energy. I think they're going to have a lot of issues. And if it comes to feeding their people or stealing Australia's gold, I think they're going to steal Australia's gold first before they, have starve their people. So that's just not where I would want our gold to be. It should be in our country.
Fuck yeah.
Totally. So what was the response to the petition, and what can you do? And what can you do with that, if anything?
Yeah. So we were surprised. A lot of people were quite strongly against the petition for the reason that they just hate central banking and they think we shouldn't be supporting the RBA at all. And I get that perspective. I wasn't able to get anyone who provided me with actual information that I could research that showed that the RBA was like a private organization that was enriching individuals. Like it could be true. I could believe that. I could believe anything now. I think they were saying, well, the Federal Reserve does it, therefore the RBA also does it. But as far as I can tell, that's not true. But if I'm happy to be corrected if someone has better information. So they really didn't like that. And I kind of I think I made the point to you, had over email that, well, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, therefore their central bank is holding Bitcoin. Like they have to, right? That's an outcome of that decision. Why is this different? And you made an interesting point that, but that's sort of like the people are starting to hold it first, and I would like to see that happen. But kind of my logic is, well, if the RBA holds 2%, then probably every state government would hold 2%, and then every council and every business, and it would just kind of go from there. So it's kind of like saying, yeah, this is money. We authorize this. I would expect that there maybe better capital gains tax treatment, certainly clearer rules. So it's like it's kind of endorsing it, and then everyone can follow along. And like the normies we talked about before, who kind of need to see it with their eyes, if they saw that, they'd be like, "Oh, Bitcoin is actually safe." All those people who told me it was for criminals, now the RBA is doing it. It's now safe. So it's kind of interesting. You sort of see RFK kind of proposing a very similar mechanism. If America does it, then maybe we will do it too. I still think it's going to be with the RBA. Like I don't believe in federal. I'm not an expert, but I don't believe in federal government. There is another place where they have a bank. Like I don't think there's another place that has money. It's like the RBA is the place that deals with the money, and that's why I targeted it to there. But so we only got in the end just under 300 signatures, which was pretty small considering the power of this community. And I think, yeah, the learning for me. You kind of like, if I was to do something again, I'd probably do a bigger pilot. So we tested the idea within the ABIB community, but not in the kind of broader, like the Bush Bash community, for example.
Yeah,
I think had we done that, we might have tweaked it differently. A key learning for me is that you need everyone to be on board, because we have such limited resources. We don't have a budget of any, maybe a few $100s to play around with, but we have very limited resources. So if you want to get a message out in the press, you need lots of money. So we all have to be 100% on board. We can't be fighting amongst ourselves. And this is what happens if you fight amongst ourselves. The issue didn't go anywhere. But you know what? That's still there. That still has to be read by a senator, I think. And that will be there forever in text. So if we ever do kind of get to that situation, we can point to say, look, this is what we suggested. And this was the Bitcoin price at the time.
I told you I was right.
Yeah.
and there's a piece of paper that proves it.
Yeah. So it's there now. Like we've learned some lessons. I'm still happy we did it. And like someone still has to read it, like in government. So you never know where something like this might lead.
And with your conversation with the likes of Austrac or whatever, like how good is their understanding in terms of what Bitcoin is, how it differs, and how open are they? Are they learning? Are you seeing them come along the path a bit?
A little bit. So they don't really care about Bitcoin as money or anything. They really just care about the money laundering stuff, and they make a reasonable argument that like a lot of Bitcoin still enables like the very easy transfer of money out of the country. So it's like from that respect, because it's the most liquid from their perspective, they see it as still kind of a big threat in terms of money laundering. And I guess I get that argument. I've really been pushing for like a threshold on KYC, because from my experience and observation, the scammers are always trying to get a lot of money out very quickly. Like they're never doing $10 a day on a DCA. It just never happens. Yeah. So if you could just if they could even give us a threshold of like $50 a day deposit, I think a lot of people would jump at that for KYC free Bitcoin. But yeah, they're kind of, I think their hands are tied a lot with like at an international level. Like the guidance comes out from an international level, and if Australia doesn't adhere to it, then some of our businesses can be locked out of international transactions. So I guess there's a lot of nuance there. Like I can kind of see their perspective. They are kind of just, doing their kind of bureaucratic jobs. I don't think they understand enough, I suppose. And I've done a few treasury submissions. They understand a fair bit there, not more than you would think, but probably not as much as a Bitcoiner, I suppose. But yeah, doing this role has kind of given me some appreciation for the perspective of, say, Austrac and also the banks. And they're not, I don't think they're evil. In fact, all the people I've dealt with, I think, are really good people. But they've got to try and they've got different incentives, I suppose.
Mm. Yeah, that sort of brings us to like who is the they that we all talk about? They being the big bad man in the room. Like who is the they that is making it difficult? Have we just made bureaucracy
and the lizard people?
Yeah. I mean, have we just made bureaucracy so complicated that none of us can get around it? We're all just looking for the easy option, and we go for the easy option, or are there genuinely people, puppeteers at the background, or are the puppeteers, or are the people just absolutely taking advantage of the situation, right? There's
I think there are
sorry, mate. I think because there's so many layers, you know what I mean? Like you can't sort of see the forest for the trees, as they say. Yeah, so yeah, anyway, sorry.
I think there are puppeteers, but I don't think they're in Australia. I think they're kind of Western Europe, America, and we kind of have to as a country play along a little bit because we need help. We're a relatively small country. We kind of have to please China because we export a lot to them, but we have to please America so we can get their military aid. And so we play along a bit. Like we're not doing it 100%, but we play along a bit. But I think there are some puppeteers that have done some stuff, and I think they're kind of, England, Western Europe, America. There's stuff that goes on there. I think what I used to think was conspiracy. Almost every conspiracy I've looked into, I've discovered is actually real.
Who? What? Tell me names.
Where do you want to start?
Go.
Well, we didn't go to the moon. There's one.
Oh, you don't think we did?
No, we definitely did.
No.
No chance.
I'm not with you. Are you a flat earther too?
That's the only one I haven't looked into. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, I'm not a flat earther, no.
No.
I did see somebody with a jar of piss on their Twitter thread today saying that some other Bitcoiner told. I don't think it was a real jar of piss. Maybe it was. I don't know. But it was like a jar of piss, and the picture is like the latest rabbit hole I have to dive down is drinking my own piss. And then somebody underneath was like, if this is the latest Bitcoiner rabbit hole, is a hard pass. Yeah. It's like you just don't know where to stop. And this sort of does a full circle a little bit, because it's like, even, I mean, I'm not talking about the jar of piss, but even we who are open to these discussions are still going, oh, that one's a bit too, like, for you. The moon, I'm not talking about the moon. The moon's that's a hard fact as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to research it. Whatever, right? You have to draw a line somewhere. The things you're not prepared, you're just not got the capacity to take on to.
Okay, well, let's quickly go to the moon, right? So I believe that the moon happened, the landing happened, because if it didn't, so many fucking people had to be complicit in that entire arrangement. Like so many people. So give me a 30-second sell.
Didn't plan on doing this on the Bitcoin podcast, but I believed it too until about 4 months ago. And then I looked into it, I'm like, no, there's no way it happened.
Why?
This is in the 60s, right? And so a lot of people watched it on TV. When they, what they filmed, they had cameras filming a projection screen. They didn't get a live feed of the moon landing, and they staged it all. And you can there's a couple of interviews that have come out more recently with NASA astronauts. There's some radiation belts around the Earth, which they didn't understand fully in the 60s, that humans can't pass through. So basically the highest shuttle that's ever been in, really, I think it was 300 miles above Earth, and they had to pull it down because the radiation was so bad that the astronauts were seeing light going into their irises, they were shooting light in their eyes. So basically they had to, I think it was sort of after Vietnam was going really badly, there's the Cold War, and they had to kind of give some good news to the population. And Kennedy had promised that they would go to the moon within a decade. And they're like, okay, we're going to deliver this promise. And they basically staged it with 1960s tech film. And if you watch, it's very hard to get the footage, because they know that people who investigate it, it's really obvious that it's fake. But if you watch the footage, it's just really bad computer game. It's really bad 1960s CGI, or probably not even CGI. It's probably hand animation. Some of the shots that are meant to be of the the moon launcher taking off from the moon, it just goes in a right angle. It's just it's not physically possible. I was blown away because I totally believed it. Up until I heard someone I really trusted is a guy called Alex Craner. He has amazing geopolitical analysis. I don't know him. He's he's in Europe. He's on podcasts, and he said, I'm like, no, that's not true. And I read about it. I Googled it. Or not, I used Start Page, and it's one of the most heavily censored topics on the internet, I reckon. It's really hard to find good content. And I found there's a couple of search engines like MetaGer, and there's another one where you can get good information. You certainly can't do it on YouTube. You have to go to Odyssey. And the first time I Googled it, I was like, oh no, that's no. We went to the moon, and then I got kind of into it again and found some content, and I was just just no way. It's just no way. Once you learn these things, there's just no way we went.
So hang on. So Elon going to Mars.
I mean, hang on. Let's start before that. I don't are rockets going into space?
Yeah.
But you're saying that people...
Oh, they go into space, into orbit, around the Earth, yeah.
No, but what about... Okay. Sorry, what about the...
international space?
The Voyager, you know what I mean? Going out to Jupiter and fucking disappearing out of the solar system.
Oh, yeah, that can happen. There's no person on there, right? because there's the people.
There would have been like
the
dogs
people would
and shit.
die. Yeah, maybe, but it's the radiation kills the people. So you can send a machine out there.
So we're never an interplanetary species. We're dying on this planet. Is that the idea?
Well, until we solve that issue, because you need to stop the radiation, you need like a lead shield, and lead is incredibly heavy. To launch. To launch weight off the ground is expensive. So, yeah, we currently don't have a solution.
So it's propulsion versus lead. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, you need a shield to shield you from the radiation. We currently don't. There's videos of NASA astronauts like recently in the last few years saying.
So is Elon, like in your opinion, is Elon part of this?
Oh, he's not part of it. It's the CIA that's behind the moon stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's also kind of. It's basically a lie. Yeah, I don't see how
it's possible. So it's.
Yeah, it's not.
Wow, I'm not on board, Jeremy, but I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Shit.
But
JP, you've fully got to tag JP in this.
Okay, will do. I just the thing that gets me about it, and I'm not taking a position either. We have no idea.
Yeah,
but if we genuinely went to the moon, then why have we not been back? If that was
that's the point. That is a good point. That is a good question.
Like why would that not have happened by now?
Yes.
I don't understand why that. Like, I just logically, I'm like, if it was possible and we'd worked out, then other people would have gone by now. But I could be entirely wrong. Who knows?
How did we get to this?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Conspiracies.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Sorry. While we're on it, I do actually really enjoy that shit. So I get this Illuminati bot thing on my feed, which is just some crazy shit, like Hillary Clinton. Fucking chilled, or the worst fucking depraved shit, and I'm like, there's no way this is true, but I have to read this. I have to go,
but this is the world of clickbait and everything we're living.
Totally.
But if that's the problem, right? If you see it as entertainment, it's like, oh, this is funny, or this is amusing, whatever. Like, and then you can just let it slide, and it's just the way to zone out for the day. That's fine. That's no problem with that at all. That's just like going to a football match at the weekend. But if you feel like you have to dig into every single conspiracy theory and you all of a sudden your whole worldview is blown up, that's a problem because people then can't manage that. They can't cope with it.
No, but come back to the orange pilling discussion. Think about the way that you think about the way you guys are feeling when I raised the topic of the moon landing and I gave you some facts and you're like, no, that's not true. That's not true. They'll flip it around when you're trying to tell your family and your friends about Bitcoin and how the money is being inflated away. Like, it's the same thing, right? You're like, oh, you're changing my worldview. This is uncomfortable. I don't like it.
Yes.
It's exactly the same process. So it's kind of a good experience to go through on the other side and go, oh, that's what it feels like. That's what my family's feeling like when I say things about Bitcoin. I'm saying these words that I know to be true, and yet they're just like, nah, it doesn't fit in my beliefs. Therefore, I'm not going to even listen to them.
Yeah. So we have to. Well, let's talk about the moon. So how do you talk about?
Are we going back to the moon?
Let's go back to the moon. So how do you talk about that issue in a way that people are willing to talk about that issue? That's the question, because that's what we're trying to do in Bitcoin, right? How do we talk about Bitcoin in a way that people are willing to talk about it? Because if we can solve that riddle.
You got to talk to the people who are going to listen. You talked about like a 15-year-old. I looked into Buddhism for a while and had this concept of a beginner mind. That's someone who doesn't have like these kind of preconceived ideas about the world. Mm-hmm. And so if you can find those people who are willing to listen and then go and look into it, and then they tell someone else, that's very powerful. Whereas some people they're going to go to their grave and they're never going to change their mind. You better not waste your time with them. Let all the other people kind of, go from one to another, and have that kind of sustainable grassroots movement happening. And the people who aren't going to get it are going to just follow along later on at a very high price when they see it, and it's like very convenient in their banking app, and they'll be the last to join, or maybe they won't ever. Maybe they'll never do it. But I just think there are some people. It's like it's deep in their psyche, these kind of beliefs. And if you unravel that belief, you're like unraveling the whole ego, and it's just too scary for them. They can't. It causes anxiety. It's just never gonna change. And I've sort of learned you're just better off not even raising it. Just focus on people who are going to listen. There was this guy came to the meetup. He was a network engineer, And he was saying to us, "Oh, yeah, but Bitcoin, isn't it really slow? Like, isn't like, name a shitcoin going to be better because it's faster?" And I said, "No, do you know about Lightning?" He's like, "No." And we showed him set him up a Lightning wallet. We sent him some Lightning. He's like, "Oh, this changes everything." And like, he got it because he's a network engineer. He understood it.
Yeah.
When you find someone like that, invest your time in them because they will then tell someone else. But other people will come in and they're just not interested because they have some other agenda or they have some other belief, and you're not going to change it. They have to learn the hard way.
But
okay.
All I was going to say was, the world is just a set of probabilities, right? Well, there's very few absolute hard facts. 100% can't be challenged. If the scientific process went at it for another 1,000 years, would we find a different result? Probably, that kind of thing. There's very few, right?
Yep.
So if we're looking at it that way, if let's say the Bitcoin price was $10,000, right? Well, if you would take a 1% position on that, are we talking? This is the numbers, $100, right? So $100. So if you were to bet, and if it's probability, and if we're saying it's a binary, Bitcoin is a binary thing, it's either going to be or it isn't going to be. Your upside is infinity. Yes. Your downside is $100.
Yep.
So this gets to where do you start people with? Well, start really small because the upside is so enormous. And the downside is just what you're prepared to lose. So that's it. Like the bit you're prepared to lose, I don't mind it's $100, $1, $1,000. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter. It'll be different for every different person. But if people can look at it that way, I think they can go, well, it's just hedging. What if I'm not? It's like you take out insurance on your car.
Yes.
Because, you might crash. You don't think you're going to crash, but you might. So, any Bitcoin, so that's all Bitcoin is right at this point in time. It's just an insurance policy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can buy less than 1 cent of Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, like the loss of your money is not a factor if you're putting in 10 cents or 20 cents. Like, there's no reason not to start.
It's almost like you feel like you just. Part of me goes, "Oh, what if I just gave anybody who asked, 100 sats, anybody who asked, you can have 100 sats." Because then they got skin in the game. They start paying attention, start trying to learn a little bit from themselves. But eventually, you're going to get somebody with a bot that asks you 1,000,000 times, and
exactly.
You can't do that. So, it's just so. Let's little bit into the conspiracy side of things with the recent thing at Commonwealth. First of all, a couple of months ago.
No, sorry.
Oh, you want a question?
I want to go back to the moon.
Oh, I'll go back to.
I'm still on the moon, right? So, can you answer me, right?
You're going to now be known as Moon Guy.
I'm a moon expert. I'll do my best.
Hang on. So, if the moon landing didn't happen, which is what, Apollo 11?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Apollo 13, did that happen or not?
Yep.
That happened.
Well, no. Apollo 13 happened in the same way as Apollo 11. Like, none of them went to the moon. But apparently what happened was, so they did Apollo 11, and then they did Apollo 12, and people complained that they put the moon landing on over like I Love Lucy or some TV show. And so like they were really excited by the first one, but the second one, like, oh, we've seen that before. So the third one, they made it dramatic so that people would tune in again. They could make fancy headlines. So it was all a way of just funneling heaps of money into NASA, and God knows where it ended up. Because they, if you think about all the budget they had, they didn't actually go to the moon. They were just doing a film set.
No. So
where did all that money go?
But Apollo 13 was that whole idea of like they didn't land and there was a big disaster and they had to slingshot themselves.
And Tom Hanks was in that.
Yeah, Tom Hanks was on like almost made it to the moon.
And then
but the reason it was dramatic was to get it was like a script to get people to pay attention again and
so
support the fact
they didn't even leave orbit and slingshot around the moon. Is that the thing?
They definitely didn't go to the moon. They would have gone into orbit around Earth in a rocket. So they definitely went into the rocket.
No, but they didn't go to the moon and around the moon and back.
No.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I can't. Okay, you finish the pod. I'm just going to sit and think.
You're going to think. Wow, we finally got him to think. Excellent. So okay.
Sorry, Combank.
All I was going to say, sorry, it's boring compared to the.
Actually, I'm going to go for a piss.
Mid pod.
And
thanks very much.
I'm sorry, I'm fucking.
Okay. So Combank a month or so ago, and then NAB yesterday or the day before, have done their thing in terms of restricting money going out to Bitcoin exchanges that they consider to be, I don't know what their wording was, potentially harmful or something along this, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they will not give you a list of who it is that they're restricting, and they'll also take fiat money coming back the other way. So they're happy to take money from scammers, but not send it to scammers. I mean, so where are like from an ABIB perspective in terms like that? Is there any discussion happening there?
Yeah. So just a little bit of context. So there are a lot of scams that do happen with Bitcoin and probably other cryptos. I only worked in the Bitcoin exchange, but I saw firsthand. And so the scam looks like someone will approach, usually an older person, and say, "Hey, we found this Bitcoin wallet. It's got like $50,000 in it, or name a number, $1 million in it. So you just have to send $10,000 of Bitcoin to unlock it." So it's like the Nigerian prince scam.
Yeah.
It's like a fancy version of that.
Sorry, is this something you were seeing at the exchange, or this is something you're just aware of? Oh, right.
No, I saw it. Yep, okay. I saw it firsthand. And so the person who is hearing that, what they do is they target the most gullible people, and they know when they have someone gullible.
Yeah.
And that person will do anything to get that $1 million or whatever they've been promised. And so they say, okay, you've got to sign up to this exchange. You've got to say these things. They train them on what to do, how to pass the processes. And so as an exchange, you ask them the question, are you working alone? They say yes. They're lying. And then you ask them, so they've been trained on how to pass it. And then the tricky thing with Bitcoin and banking is, so banking, people kind of expect they pay something on their credit card, and if they get scammed, they can ring up and the bank will refund them. As you know, in Bitcoin, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So once the Bitcoin leaves, it's gone forever. There's nothing anyone can do to get it back, unless the person was, able to chose to refund it. So you have all these scams that happen, and it's quite hard to tell sometimes who is a scammer and who is genuine, because the people are lying. They're being told to lie to pass the kind of screening processes. They're being trained by these scammers who are overseas, and the scammers just keep doing it until they get caught, or like that person, their account gets blocked, and then they go and find another victim. So the value of these scams is growing at about 65% between last year and this year.
Mm-hmm.
And now banks, they have banking licenses, and if they have some fraud metrics that they have to adhere to, and they can lose their banking license if they have too much fraud. So kind of from their perspective, they're sort of responsible. They're sort of giving themselves the responsibility, I suppose, of saying, well, if I allow the transfer from this person's bank account to a Bitcoin exchange, and then some sort of scam is committed, then like that looks bad for my fraud metrics and my banking responsibilities.
But hang on a second. So they've got gullible. You've got scammer. You've got gullible person A. Yep. Scammer contacts gullible person. It's called Brendo, right?
Yep.
Contacts me. Where I pulled that name from. So they contact Brendo and they say, we'll send you $50,000 if you send us $10,000 first. But the only way we can sorry, I'm just making up numbers.
Yep.
But the only way we can do that is if it's through Bitcoin. So they coach them into how to become a customer of a Bitcoin exchange.
Yes.
They then encourage the person to buy Bitcoin on that exchange and send them the Bitcoin from the exchange. So the bank is concerned that their customer who's transferring, well, they're not really concerned about the customer, they're concerned about the $10,000, but they're and their banking license.
Yes.
So they're concerned that their customer is being scammed. They're concerned about their license, but they're not actually. The Bitcoin exchange actually isn't. I mean, I guess it's facilitating the scam, but they themselves haven't done anything wrong.
No, so the person has basically lied to them. Yeah, well, the person has lied to them. This is interesting, like who is responsible? But like we're talking about, six-figure sums being lost, people losing their life savings, and it's growing very fast.
Yep.
And so I think what the banks have done is like, okay, let's just stop this. Let's stop it here.
Yeah. And
then we'll figure out, okay, how do we operate within this? So Commonwealth put out their notice that they were going to restrict some payments to some exchanges, and there were some delays, and they talked about like a $10,000 monthly limit. I think they maybe have backed off a little bit on that. So I wrote an open letter to Commonwealth Bank on Twitter through the ABIB account. Haven't heard anything, but just kind of expressing the opinion of the Bitcoin community. We're working on another proposal, which would basically be like a mechanism that they could maybe consider implementing. So I don't know if you guys use ComSec, but in ComSec, you have to, if you want to trade options, so if you get a ComSec account, you can trade shares straight away. But if you want to trade options, which are super risky, you have to opt into like another level, and you have to like accept some terms and conditions and talk, absolve yourself of any risks and so on. And so my suggestion is, why don't they create a bank account like that? So you can get a standard bank account, and then like you have to opt into maybe this bank account that allows you to transact with Bitcoin exchanges, for example. So I've written that. I just need to do some. I haven't kind of taken it through the community, and I want to get a few people to look over it before we publish it. But that's in the works. The hard part is we don't really have a network into the banking industry. So if someone listening is a banker and knows some senior people at Commonwealth Bank, please let me know, because we want to set up a meeting. We would like to be collaborative and proactive and work with these people to try and solve the problem, because the Bitcoin is not going away. So people are going to find a way to buy it. And so I think the banks kind of think the way they can just close it off. But people are going to be more and more interested in buying Bitcoin. And potentially there's an opportunity for some banks to kind of make an offering that works with certain exchanges, for example. Or I even think they should just bank the Bitcoin industry. So there's only one bank that actually supplies all of the banking services to the entire crypto industry in Australia. Whereas I think if Commonwealth went and said, okay, we're going to provide banking services to the Bitcoin exchanges, they would have much more visibility about what's going on. You know, you can start looking at conspiracy theory. The thing I've been actually watching is some of the announcements about cash. Some people may not know that the cash that you hold in your hand, if you deposit in that into the bank, that's called a bank deposit. They can leverage that something like 33 times, which means that, like, you know, if you've got $3 in the bank, they may loan out $100 to someone else. So if everyone tries to claim their cash back, it's not there. There's been some kind of worrying signs for me about, like, Westpac, I think, was making restrictions about cash withdrawals, and their justification was really like dodgy. Like, they were saying, oh, people are using cash less, so we're going to restrict. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If they're using it less, you don't need to restrict it. And there was a story of a guy depositing some cash, and he got, like, you know, I think he got his account blocked and stuff. And then there was a lady who tried to take $3.5 grand out from a bank in, I think it was Queensland, and they didn't have it in the bank. And you just kind of think, I don't know, it seems a bit suspicious. I don't have any good evidence, but there's just a few things happening. Also, you had Commonwealth Bank last week of the financial year on the Monday. All their systems went down for like 6 hours. So you couldn't I couldn't log into my net bank. I think, oh, that was odd timing into the financial years. So there's kind of a few things happening that maybe the banking system is not so stable. Is the crypto related to that? I don't know. But I do think they have some justification in what they're doing, just because the scams are genuine and they are really hard to figure out unless you speak to people. So that's why both of you guys, when I was at HardBlock, I actually had to ring you, and we used to ring every single person and just ask them questions to see if they actually understood Bitcoin. Like, how do you do a transaction, and, you know, what are you going to do? Like, where do you know how to store it? Because pretty quickly you could tell, like, if someone couldn't answer those questions, that they weren't actually a Bitcoiner. And the only way we knew that they were not scammers is if they were Bitcoiners. And then, like, how did you find out about it? Oh, through the podcast. Oh, okay. Was if they made up some story, you know, like, oh, I Googled it, you know, like, you can kind of tell straight away. But
yeah,
most big exchanges can't afford to call every customer or do a video meeting with every customer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can kind of see that there are going to be some challenges, you know, when you have this interaction of a banking system where they're expected to, like, do reverse transactions and then integrate that with Bitcoin, where the money's gone and then it's never coming back. It's messy.
When you were doing the kind of not cold calling, but calling verification stuff, like,
yep,
were you finding many that you thought were a bit dodgy, or were most okay?
It was not unusual to find dodgy people, and I think we had improved our systems. It used to be worse. There were sort of things you could look at straight away and just know something was a bit, like, especially if they were older.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was certainly not uncommon to see something dodgy. Yeah.
Well, you accepted my uncle, and he's totally dodgy.
On your reference.
Yeah, that's all good. It's all good. He's not dodgy. So kind of up more practically, right? So if somebody out there is listening, I would guess I don't know, but the vast majority, I would imagine, of our listeners are already Bitcoiners, and some of them may have small businesses and they're trying to start accepting Bitcoin, right? There's going to be people like that. So,
yep.
What would you if those people feel like they want some sort of industry representation, you know, they want to have a bit of advice, or they want to speak with other businesses, or they, you know, how do they go about contacting ABIB, or what do they do? What kind of things would you offer to somebody like that?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, which is bitcoinindustry.org.au, or I made a short one, abib.au, and just go to contact us, and you'll get to me. And what I think one of the things we can provide that's valuable is just connecting different people. Like we've had a couple, like an accountant and a tax lawyer, become sponsors, and I connected them up. They didn't know each other, but like they've got the same problems to solve. Like, how do I hold Bitcoin in my accounting business? And so I think just having probably the most powerful thing we can do is just help people to network and connect. Because then they can solve their own problems together. We can also, for example, and not many people know this, I believe the Bitcoin Wind Fund, which is a charity, will pay for Catan to help people set up, for example, a BTC Pay server, like if they need that for their website.
Oh, cool.
That's a service. Yeah, so like you to encourage adoption, or you can just go pay him yourself. Ministry of Knowledge, like it's not an official ABIB thing, but if you need someone to help you do that. We have a community on Telegram. So again, if you've got questions where you want to interact with people, we can help that way. But I did want to just come back to the banking thing. And I think kind of people are looking to, it's interesting, people are looking to someone else to, regulate the banks or tell them that what they're meant to do. And I kind of think, it's a free market. It's their right to do whatever they want. We need to say, okay, this is the direction of the banking industry in Australia. How am I going to set myself up personally so that I'm protected from it? In England, half of the banks don't allow transfers to crypto exchanges. Like half of them just don't allow it, full stop.
Wow.
And it's possible that we're going to go in that direction. Like we should be, I hope it's not the case, and we're trying to make it not the case. But we should be accepting of the fact that maybe it will go that way. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage people to start thinking about, well, what if I'm no longer allowed to send money from my bank account to, my Bitcoin exchange? Or what if I can only get $1,000 a day out from the ATM? Start thinking about how to scenario plan it, because I kind of think sometimes we're meant to be free market people, but then we complain when people make their own decisions. You're like, someone should tell them what to do. Well, that's regulation.
Yeah.
Central planning, like you figure your own solution out is kind of, I think, sometimes, a good backup plan.
Yeah. Understanding that there is risk on both sides of this equation.
Yes.
And allocating your own personal wealth in a way that you feel comfortable with. And nobody else can tell you what that is. You just have to go looking for information, come to your own conclusions.
No, and it's not easy because you got to deal with price volatility and things like that. But think about a world where it's not going to be okay. Like how are you going to operate? Are you going to peer-to-peer transfer at your Bitcoin meetup, or think it through.
Yeah, but back to your earlier point, the number that you need is not a big number.
No, it's exactly right. Yeah, you don't, for the long term, if you're looking at 20, 30 years for your super or your kids, buy a house or something, you really don't need that much.
Mate, that's great. Is there anything you would like to ask of people, or anything you'd like to get in touch, any help that you require, or anywhere you'd like to send them?
Look, I think, like I said, if someone does work in the banking industry, we'd love to have a contact so that we can just start a conversation at any level. But also just like for you guys, just, well done on getting to, I think, is it close to 100 episodes?
Almost.
My kids did the artwork competition. They were really excited about that. And I just think like a really cool way to engage with the community. So yeah, just like, well done for you guys doing this early, because a lot of people are doing podcasts now, but you were out there doing it early. And I know it's in your own time. It's not a lucrative thing that you get paid a lot of money to do.
Oh, not for us.
Look at the studio.
Not for us.
Look at the studio.
You're doing it for the love of it. And I think it's just awesome that you've gone and done it. And yeah, it's great to hear different stories and connect to other Bitcoiners that, it's not physically possible to go and meet everyone in Australia. So it's a really cool thing you've developed here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I hope it is providing some level of value to somebody out there somewhere. There is 1,432,047 sats to be won in the art competition for children.
And we got a week.
One of you guys can tell us what that is.
Over a week.
Yeah, what date's today?
20th.
By the time this goes out, it's going to be like 2 days before the close, or 3-4 days before the close. Yep. There is still plenty of spaces, guys. You could definitely win a prize. Not trying to increase the competition for your kids, mate, but there's the prizes to be won. So if you want some, guys, go to the website, which will be in the, don't know why I did that. We're not on video. In the notes below. Mate,
It's
thank you.
like a 1-800 number. You're like,
I've watched too many YouTube videos when they go,
Yeah.
just go watch this video.
Subscribe.
Subscribe and like.
Click the link.
Click the link. Thank you. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I've really enjoyed it. The time's just flown by.
Thanks, Jeremy.
They really do.
Cool.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.